Final Fantasy VIII is hands down my favorite Final Fantasy game, and today I want to talk about it. So let's get our junctions ready and charge in. Before we begin getting into Final Fantasy VIII itself, I would like to start with the story. You see, Final Fantasy VIII is the only Final Fantasy game I've ever played through. I've been playing the original on the PS3, and recently I bought Final Fantasy IX to start playing. But Final Fantasy VIII is the only one that I've played from beginning to end. I'm sure some of you are wondering, why not Final Fantasy VII? You see, I have little interest in playing 7. Now, before you leave or hunt me down, please let me explain. I completely respect Final Fantasy VII, and I know it has touched a lot of people. The Completionist has an entire month dedicated to Final Fantasy VII, and it's amazing. However, I feel that 7 casts a big shadow over 8 due to its coming out right after it. And also for me, 8 has a hold on my heart. Final Fantasy VIII was a big deal for me. For one, it was the first Final Fantasy game I ever played, and I'll admit, I was not good at it at first. I got lost, the system was confusing at first, and it was my first taste of JRPGs besides Pokemon. I was late getting into these games, and admittedly, I ended up putting it away for a long while. But I never forgot about the game, and Final Fantasy VIII stuck with me as a personal challenge to get better at. As I said, this was my first JRPG, and a new experience for me. The world was massive to explore. The battle system was more complex than what I was used to at the time. But as I played a little more, each time I understood it better. That may sound silly, but video games became a growing presence in my teen years. I had played some games growing up on the SNES, Sega, and the PlayStation, but I didn't know about the expanding art medium it had grown into, simply from just not being exposed to it at the time. Final Fantasy VIII was my introduction to these things and a real eye-opener for this growing medium. And I love the game for that. But also, as I said, that means I had a lot to adjust to. I ended up restarting the game a lot due to this, but not because it was hard or boring or bad. It was just new. But each time I got better at it, and I appreciated it much more. The other reason for the long journey through this game was due to life reasons. Any time I got particularly far, something would happen in my real life that would just simply pull me away from the game for a while. Whether it had to do with family, school, or other major things in life, Final Fantasy VIII always happened to be the game I would be playing and would have to inevitably pause for a while, but in a way that was okay, because Final Fantasy VIII ended up being one of those games that helped me cope with things when life roughed me up a little bit. As stated before, Final Fantasy VIII is a JRPG, where you have 5 out of 6 members to switch out with in a party. Squall is always in your main team, and he wields the iconic gunblade. Rinoa, the leading heroine, uses an arm circlet. Selphie, the ever-so-cheerful, uses nunchucks. The emotional but friendly Zell is a martial arts expert. Quistis, the motherly instructor, wields a whip, and Irvine, the good-natured sharpshooter, is our sniper. I personally like to use Squall, Irvine, and Renoa for my main team. Throughout the story, there will be times you have two teams to switch in and out with, and occasionally you will have other characters to use in parties during certain situations, but for the most part you will have these 6 characters. Combat is turn-based, and you have different options: attack, draw magic, use magic, item, GF, and ability. Spells are accessed through the draw system. Spells are used to attack, heal, and support depending on the magic, but they are also used to junction to your stats. It can be overwhelming starting out, but as you get used to it, it gets much easier. It also gives you the option to auto junction, so you can see how to kind of play with the system and get used to what you would like to do and have a certain character junction to the spells you want. But the auto system is very helpful for starting out. Guardian forces are massively important. You get different ones throughout the game, through side quests, drawing from boss battles, and you actually start out with 2 at the beginning of the game. GFs are junctioned to party members, and as you gain experience, so do they. And they will learn abilities that you can use, such as revive, recover, mug, card, and the list goes on. Now I'm going to start talking about the story, and while I don't want to spoil every detail, I do want to talk about the main focus and main parts of the story. So if you have not yet played Final Fantasy VIII, please feel free to pause this video and come back after you've played the game through. The story follows our main hero Squall, who is a seed candidate for Balam Garden. Gardens are essentially mercenary schools, and seeds are dispatched around the world. Along the way, Squall is reluctantly thrust into missions with others, and tries to hold on to his lone wolf persona, but he eventually warms up to the group and calls them his companions as the story progresses. What's nice about this to me is that Squall never seems like a jerk. He just seems withdrawn, which people can relate to. I know I can, at least. I wanted to seem calm and strong around others when things weren't going so well, while on the inside I was scared, and letting that shield down around others can be very hard. But just as Squall met people that stuck with him and taught him it's okay to let down that wall, I learned that as well with my friends. But I will say, Squall has reason to try and keep that strong wall up. His world is horrifying. As we go on through the story, we find monsters all over the world, and we eventually find out about Sorceress Edea. One of Seed's missions is to attempt assassination on this Edea, and this is where we meet Irvine, who joins the group as the sniper. But we soon learn that Irvine knows more than he lets on at first. He chokes at the assassination, but we find out why later on. And this brings me to my favorite part of the whole game. A little while after the assassination attempt, we find out about an orphanage that Irvine grew up in. He tells everyone what it was like to live there, and that he does remember Squall and Selphie and everyone else except Renoa also living there and growing up with him. We then find out that the reason no one else remembered was due to using Guardian forces. Unfortunately, the price they pay for borrowing their power are their memories, but Irvine had just joined the group and thus still had this memory to share. Seeing the group as kids in this scene, learning about their price for GFs, and yet still they wound up all meeting again despite this, just pulled me into the game even further. I felt very moved, and I grew an attachment to this ragtag team. I remember still to this day seeing this part at 3 o'clock in the morning, and just sitting there in the dark, watching this scene play out, and I remember crying. We also find out in the scene that the reason Irvine had choked during the assassination was because the one that cared for them all had been Edea, but they had all known her as Matron, and Irvine was the only one that remembered her. We then later on learn why Edea is now our enemy. It is because sorceresses cannot die before passing on their powers. Our main antagonist, Ultimecia, had come to the orphanage after being defeated in the future, and Matron, not wanting it to be one of the children to take on this task, took on the mantle herself. We then find out that it was Matron's idea to begin gardens and seeds, to prepare them for when they would have to destroy her. For the power of a sorceress warps their bearers and causes them to forget and become corrupt. Edea wanted to protect Squall and the others from herself. But as Edea is eventually defeated in the middle of the game, she passes on her powers by mistake to Rinoa. Edea survives and is taken then to Esthar to try and keep this from happening without knowing that it was too late. Through many challenges from here on out, Squall and Rinoa fall in love, and despite finding out that she now is a sorceress, Squall refuses to let her be contained. And from here is where I will leave you to explore and find the conclusion to this adventure, because to me, it's just too good to spoil. Between discovering what horrors lie in this world, side quests to uncover, parts of the story I left out to try and not spoil everything, this game has a lot to offer. The final fight with Ultimecia is something to behold. These characters go through so much, and it pulls me in even more every time I play it. Getting all of the GFs is something to be proud of as well. There's a side quest in the Deep Sea Research Center where you can get 2 summons, the first one being Bahamut, who challenges you at the first level of the research center, and then below, after Bahamut joins you, is Ultima Weapon, one of the strongest, hardest bosses in the game. And in him is the summon Eden. By drawing from him during the battle, after painstakingly getting through it, you earn the strongest summon in the game. And I painstakingly did this, and I was so proud when I got through it. This game has so much under its surface, so I urge you, if you haven't already, go and play it. Maybe see why this game means so much to me. Get to know Squall, Irvine, and everyone. Final Fantasy VIII is a great game with a lot to offer. I feel that it shouldn't live in the shadow that it seems to. It should be treated as its own game, and to me it's a real treasure that will stay with me. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And please remember that being a kid at heart is something to treasure. Final Fantasy VIII is